6:06. So, welcome and good evening, everyone. And a special thank you to Leadership Middle Tennessee for partnering with us for tonight's book review. This is one that I think we'll be talking about for quite some time. And if for no other reason, will we continue to make the delicious cocktails at the end of every chapter for quite some time. There are 52 of them, right? So we can make a different one every week for a whole year.
Exactly.
So I'd like to encourage, if you're not a member, to join WPCTN. The cost is $75 per year and helps with all the programs that we do, such as this. Um, we will be hosting, WPCTN will be hosting a lunch and learn this Friday at noon to discuss the new National Museum of African American Music. So this discussion will feature Henry Hicks and Kevin Lavender, as well as Stacy Garrett. So if you are available, I suggest that you join WPCTN on Friday. I hate that I'm going to miss, I have a work conflict. Otherwise, I would absolutely be there. But I assure you it's going to be a very interesting conversation as well. So please take the time to come and register and or join WPCTN so we can continue to do these types of programs. So first, let's start with, before I introduce our illustrious guest, her book, as I said, weaves in these masterful cocktails that goes with each chapter and each character. So who, I know we're supposed to be on mute, but right now I want to know who came prepared with one of the featured cocktails. Who's ready? I wanted to make the spider's web. I was running a little too late. I didn't get to make the spider's web. So I'm going to have just a traditional old fashioned, but I'm making the spider's web next. Who else has got a cocktail for tonight? I think Karen made one. No, nobody wants to tell. Nobody wants to say. What are you drinking, Alice?
I've got the caramel Camelot. That's like the secret little extra one, which uses a ginger, turmeric, peach tea, and I shake it up with Gentleman Jack, and it's really wonderful.
And Lita, it's Joyce. I made the step follows gaze.
Yes.
I love that. That's the libation for the feast day of Anna Gordy. Step follows gaze.
Love it.
One of the things I love about the cocktails, I'll just say that one of the main themes of this book is joy is radical. And a cocktail is a 5 sense address to joy. The sight, the sound, the scent, the touch, the taste of joy.
Ooh.
And it's also really exciting because a cocktail can be a visual metaphor. I think it's Karen who made the last lick. That's the libation for the. It looks like a bruise on brown skin. She was an anti-domestic violence activist. People don't know that about Della Reese. And she was a domestic violence survivor herself. But most of you probably know the restaurant Bricktop, if you're from Nashville. This is the original Bricktop, a Black woman born in West Virginia. And you may not know that she opened a bar in Paris in 1924. She also had a bar in Rome, and she would eventually open a bar in Mexico City, where in all of these bars, she employed Black, brown, and white people. So she was a global barkeep.
Wow.
And she was so celebrated as a bartender that Noel Coward wrote a whole song about her. F. Scott Fitzgerald put her in one of his early novels. And we've almost forgotten her. We go to Bricktop, but we don't know, we don't remember the original Bricktop, who was literally a global bartender shaking up culture and creating a center where James Baldwin would attend. Josephine Baker came to her place in Paris. Her drink is a 66 Rue Pigalle. It has freckles in it because there's strawberries in it that look like Bricktop's freckles, and it also looks like her hair. So I suggest as we get into spring, you all mix up some 66 Rue Pigalles and celebrate the original Bricktop, who shook up culture by shaking up cocktails. And I want you to remember that a cocktail can be a poem, and celebrate all the art that isn't recognized as art, from country songs to blues songs to cocktails.
Oh wow, what a great series. See, this is why I really just fell in love with this book because the stories are told just like you just shared that. I love brick tops, and I never knew that story. It's like every time I turn a page, it's like I'm having a new discovery about something that I had, like I didn't know that about Della Reese. It was just so much I just did not know. And I felt that I was pretty up on on my knowledge of certain things. But when I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. And I didn't know this either. I love that. And I love that, you know, as we dive into this, I know we're going to get more of these golden nuggets from you that's why I said we're going to be talking about this for a while. Like this conversation does not end tonight for sure.
And another fun thing about Bricktop, because I think about women's political power and women's power. Some of it's very public and some of it's very private. Bricktop made a lot of money in her life and was an entrepreneur as well as a singer and a bartender and bar owner. But she had a sister who was a very successful entrepreneur and did a good job of writing a great will and creating trust, literal trust. So at the end of her life, Bricktop wasn't being supported after she'd been so generous to so many, but had to suffer through the Second World War and all the economic trials of that and running a global enterprise. She depended on her sister, her Black sister, made sure there was not too much life at the end of the money. Bricktop's sister had saved and made money slowly and saved enough to carry not just herself, but her sister, because she knew her sister was carrying so many artists and others. Wow. And so that private way that families stand by each other, they're public political women. With you all, I can't help but show you Lynette Dobbins Taylor, and I raise her up in honor of Kamala Harris. Lynette Dobbins Taylor, with her husband, coined the phrase and the theory affirmative action. Here, this is Lynette Dobbins Taylor, was the first Black American woman to dance with the American president at his inauguration. She danced with LBJ. People noted that, but they didn't notice that actually she helped put LBJ in office. One of the connections I want to make again at the top of this hour for you all is it's so important to look at Detroit right now. Lynette Dobbins Taylor puts LBJ in office. But in 2021, right now, this book is a love letter to the city of Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Love letter to the city of Detroit. Yeah. And every person on this Zoom, every political progressive woman in America needs to be down on their knees thanking Detroit. Thanking specifically the children and grandchildren of Black Bottom. Because the children and grandchildren of Black Bottom voted in the highest percentages we've ever seen any Americans vote in a presidential election. Black women in Detroit voted at a rate of about 85% of those who were eligible to vote. Detroit put Michigan on its back and turned America into a better direction by delivering 17 electoral votes. But these are very specifically the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Black Bottom doing the kind of political activism that is celebrated all through this book. It's not unique. We see some of it. Also, what happened in Atlanta and Philadelphia is very related to what happened in Detroit. But only Detroit, one city, carried a state. A state, the vast majority of the counties of Michigan went for Trump. In Detroit, they came out, as in Philadelphia and Atlanta, but they had 17 votes. And the other thing I will say again at the top of this hour, I want to bring up a saint I rarely get to talk about. That's Ziggy's mama and aunt. The aunt I talk about a lot. That's Ziggy's mama. Ziggy's mama was a praying Black woman, and this has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with organization. Praying Black women delivered the vote in this last election. And I don't mean by prayer, by using their organizational skills, down and up and across. two different programs that were very little discussed in the national media: Stroll to the Polls, which was the organization of Black sororities, and Souls to the Polls, Facebook and email organizations of Black church people, are largely responsible for the vote in Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. And it's wild, they did this essentially under the radar. People weren't talking about Stroll to the Polls. They weren't talking about Souls to the Polls. But right before even this recent election in Georgia that got us 2 Democratic senators, I was in a Zoom with 45,000 people that included Oprah Winfrey, and I cannot even say who organized it, who else was on it. And the backbone of it was partially Stroll to the Polls, Souls to the Polls, and then add some organizations like the Links. We need to start giving these women and these organizations their due. And I am totally in camp Stacey Abrams, and she would be the first to say, thank praying Black women. And it's wild, the national discussion is so much about the evangelicals who pray. And I put up in my Facebook, I came here as a country songwriter. I love Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash. I think they are 2 of the most important poets in America. Johnny Cash mentored me when I was a young songwriter. I put Merle Haggard right up there with Langston Hughes as an important American poet. So I took a white country hymn, Satan Wears a Jeweled Crown. I posted that up on my Facebook. And it's a stunning song. It's about people selling their soul for external power. Satan is real, and Satan wears a jeweled crown. I am very concerned by anyone who considers themselves a Christian and calls themselves a Christian and then treats President Trump like a god. The first commandment, thou shalt have no gods before me. Idolatry is the #1 sin. It comes before all the rest. In any praying Black woman will tell you that we can fear. I fear I love my daughter too much because we have to put God first. I remember once telling Caroline, Mama loves you more than anything. And she said, oh no, Mama, you need to love God more. My little daughter. And I said, Caroline, I'm more sure you exist than God does. And she said, Mama, I'll pray for you. I had raised her right. And she brought me back to the humble love of God that I should have. But we need to look at that, just even as a political phenomenon. Ziggy would never have underestimated. It is grounded in Ziggy's mother's church to begin with. It's a hagiography. His mother was a Catholic. And though Ziggy probably was a secular humanist, we might say, and I have spent a lot of my life as a secular humanist before I came back to being a praying Episcopal churchwoman. This is a book of virtues, and all the virtues are not virtues the church would always recognize. Because Ziggy, the man over my shoulder, is the narrator of this book. And Ziggy migrated from the world of the church into the world of show bar.
Yes, he is narrating from his hospital bed. It's like his deathbed. Yeah.
You think he's narrating from his hospital bed. He's only 54 years old. It reminds us about life expectancy at the time. What's also, and by the time, I mean 1967, 68. Actually, Ziggy isn't dying that young for a Black man born in Chicago when he was dying. What's interesting is in Detroit at that time, there were 14 Black-owned hospitals. For those of you who haven't been on one of these talks before, one of the things is, this book is set in Detroit 48 to 68, when Detroit was a caramel Camelot, name of my drink, a shining hour of Black art, activism, athletics, and industry, and girls and women were at the center of it. The first Black poet laureate of the United States came from Black Bottom. He spent 22 years in Nashville, though, as a Fisk professor. One of the great Black Detroit was an epicenter of Black golf. epicenter of Black golf, but it doesn't get to be that without Teddy Rhodes, who started off caddying at Belle Meade Country Club and will come to Detroit, teach Joe Louis, who rose from Detroit, how to golf, teach so many people how to golf. And when Teddy Rhodes was dying in Nashville, he was being supported by money from Detroit that he was being raised from Ziggy's readers from the Michigan Chronicle, which was a Black newspaper from that era.
I'm telling you, I'm getting all kinds of texts and chats about how fascinating this is. But before we go further, Alice, I want us to take a walk through this virtual museum. I was going to read your bio. I don't need to read your bio. Everybody knows who Alice Randall is. And I mean, you can see she is such a phenomenal woman in telling this story. So let me get, wait a minute.
Yes, we're going to take a tour of the Black Bottom Saints Museum. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let me not share just yet because it looks like it's having a little bit of a problem here. Hold on one second.
We were in it a second ago. Before
I was in it a second ago. See, it's giving me this little error message now. Let me go back. Let's see. Here we go. Let's try it again.
As we're loading this, let me tell you that the book is divided into 4 seasons. It starts in summer on Father's Day. It goes from summer to fall, and from fall to goes from summer to fall, and from fall to winter, and winter to spring.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, yeah. Let's get it back up here.
It looks like it's about to go.
Yes, there we go.
Here we are. This is the outdoors of the Black Bottom Saints Museum. It was actually designed by Darius Smith, who is actually a curator at the Tennessee State Museum. This is one of the first saints, the hidden saint, Eartha Kitt. She is a saint that reminds us to speak the truth to power. For you political women's caucus members, she went to LBJ's White House and confronted Mrs. Johnson and the president himself about the relationship to sending young Black boys to Vietnam to die disproportionately and violence in the city. This is the Gallery of Summer. Here we see Robert Hayden, the first Black poet laureate of the United States. Right to his right, he's the first saint in the book. You will see Sadie Pryor, and who's one of my very favorite saints. It'll go there, right there. Sadie Pryor was a librarian. Of all the saints I could share with you, she's probably the most important because with her little Black dress, wearing her pearls, she went and effectively lobbied racist legislatures down in Florida to get lifeguards for the Black beaches. They opened up the beaches to Black kids, but provided no funding for lifeguards. She played low to get that safety. These are the saints. We've now entered into the gallery of fall. Fall is the most serious and sad gallery of all. This is Tanya Blanding. She was killed in her home in the summer of 1967. She was 4 years old. She was shot dead by Michigan state troopers. She is the saint of violated innocence. She is the proof that structural obstacles, structural racism, structural sexism, structural classism cannot be overcome by individual excellence. You don't get to move from trauma to transcendence, something almost all these saints do, if you are shot down in your home at 4 years old. This is Elsa Roxburgh. She is the first Black woman to go to the University of Michigan and live in the dorms. She is going to best Arthur Miller in a playwriting contest. She's going to produce and direct Langston Hughes plays, but she's also going to commit suicide in New York City. And she's going to remind us that political women have to be engaged in self-care. We're just passing Artist Lane to the left. I am proud to say that Artist Lane has just had a piece of hers, Rosa Parks, picked for the Oval Office. This is Della Reese. I've already told you some things about her. You don't know that she aspired to go to Fisk or Radcliffe and to become a psychiatrist. Her mother died and there was not enough money. And so she had to begin to prepare for a career that became extraordinarily successful as an actress, as a singer. But as I said, what is most important is what she did as an activist, providing greater and greater safety for other women, Black, white, and Asian. Here we have Laverne Baker, second woman to go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We can all learn something from Laverne because when she was first performing in Chicago, she would perform in overalls and a straw hat. There was cotton at the bottom of that poster because she wanted to remember all of those that were left behind, particularly in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. Laverne Baker. Here we have the Saints of Winter. These are one-person grit machines. Lloyd George Richards started off as a shoeshine boy. He will rise to be the dean of the Yale School of Drama. His mother will be a maid who gets stricken with blindness. His father was an assembly line worker till he just died, I think, of diphtheria. Lloyd George Richards will be the first person to direct Raisin in the Sun on Broadway, and he will discover August Wilson. He started off as a shoeshine boy who understood the power of grit and opportunity. Billy D. Parker, no saint more important than Billy D. He represents all the breadwinners, the people who worked on the assembly lines, Mr. Ford's assembly line, Briggs' assembly line. But when they came off the assembly line, were ready to support art. And I don't just mean music. The Gotham Hotel was a very important center of Black Bottom. It hosted a Black photography club that was so amazing. Sammy Davis joined it. We have sculptors, we have people in the world of film. Here is Dr. Bob Bennett. We have doctors in Black Bottom, supported by the Black breadwinners who can come to these doctors and pay them. Lucille Ellis danced with Katherine Dunham around the world. Nellie Hill Trapp was a star of the Black cinema. All of these people are in Black Detroit. Here we are entering into the Gallery of Spring. We see John White, who owned the Gotham Hotel right here. What I haven't told you about John White, who owned the Gotham Hotel, is that he made money on the hotel. He also made money on the numbers, the illegal lottery. All of our saints do not have all the classic virtues, but they all have significant virtues. Here we have Shirley MacNeille, PhD, one of my favorites, one of the first people in America, 75 years ago, she was using meditation for violence disruption. Who knows that? That's a cutting edge thing now. Shirley MacNeille was doing it in the 60s. There's Detroit Red and Mom's Mabley. We're going to come across the way and see Alf Thomas, another Black man who's going to found 3 hospitals and own his own island between Detroit and Canada, where he'll cultivate the American lotus, and he will be on the board of Meharry when he dies. As I've spoken to you before, there's Teddy Rhodes, who's going to begin life, professional life, as a caddy, but be a great friend to male and female golfers. Here is Ziggy and Colored Girl. Ziggy is the narrator of the novel, but actually he's edited by that little girl, all grown up, Mari. And Ziggy is a saint that gives us all the other saints. So I often say, in that sense, he's my favorite saint. When you come back to the museum, you can note that you can click on one. Here we have the libation of the feast day of Joe Louis, Dawn Comes Sweet. You can click on the cocktails and you get a recipe. As Lolita has told you, every single one of the chapters ends with a cocktail recipe. And this is because the novel addresses public and private trauma, but it takes as its central themes, joy is radical and love is the strut and hate is the symbol. Because joy is radical, and love is the strut and hate is the stumble. Each chapter ends with that 5 cents addressed to joy. As we exit the galleries, I hope you'll revisit them. We will review for 1 second that the saints of summer are the roots of the Black experience. They are often born in the 19th century and had direct experience with slavery. The saints of fall are the ones who experience the greatest adversities and structural obstacles to achievement. The saints of winter are one-person geniuses of grit. If there's a way to get past structural obstacle, they know it and they're going to do it. The saints of spring are the ones who completely get to thrive despite. They don't have easy lives, but they thrive. They get to pure joy, and they take a lot of folks with them. I note up there that Google Fiber helped deliver this to us, and I always want to sing their praises when we get a chance to. But come back, visit the saints, find the saint you're most like, find the saint you need now, find ways to find the hidden political actors. Remember that Tallulah Bankhead is one of the most important saints, and she is the original great white ally. And thank you for visiting the Black Bottom Saints Museum. I want you to know that the person who built this museum for me is a 13-year-old young lady mixed. Her mama is white and her daddy is Black, and she's a 9th grader at the University School of Nashville, and she used a platform out of Athens, Greece. We used all of our assets Ziggy would have wanted to put that together. That's Madeline Ewing. And the exhibit designer I told you is Daria Smith, associated with the Tennessee State Museum. And that is the Black Bottom Saints Museum. Thank you for visiting.
Oh my God, Alice, that was incredible. I mean, I've seen you do that before, but this time I just felt even more moved. That is incredible. So first, I'd like to say thank you for broadening our minds and introducing us to Black Bottom. So it's amazing how many people, when you talk about this book, they say, I didn't know anything about Black Bottom. And in fact, I had a conversation with someone recently who her family is from Michigan. And she was unaware. She was like, I know my family has to know about Black Bottom, but I don't know anything about it. So thank you so much for introducing this to us and broadening our mindset about what was happening in Detroit, all the great cultural moments, all the things that are even impacting us here in Nashville from there. So what inspired you to write this book?
One, to realize it was like Camelot, that it had vanished and people didn't know it. You know, we even have a Black Bottom neighborhood in Nashville. I'm living in it right now. Second and Demonbreun is part of the old Black Bottom here that was called that by Zora Neale Hurston. But in the late 50s and 60s, the same thing happened in Detroit as happened in Nashville to a lesser degree. It was raised to the ground in this urban renewal movement that some people call Negro removal. Black Bottom, the Gotham Hotel, was knocked to the ground in 1963. I say it rises in 2020 in our pages. But part of it, and I say this to my sisters here, when I was writing this book, this is the book that took me half a century of living and 10 years, 7 years of research, 3-4 years of writing to write. And when I was starting to write it about 4.5 years ago, to really write it up, it was the beginning of 2 very important movements, Say Her Name and Me Too. I want to speak about Me Too first, related to this book. One of the things that happened, particularly in Michigan, there was the horrible case of doctors who were supposed to take care of gymnasts, mainly who are white women gymnasts, and who abused those girls, abused those women. And I heard so many of their mothers give testimony and say, they will never be fine. Their lives are ruined. And I want to say, and I'm going to put this very politically for you all, because there's very educated women on this call. I believe there were 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. 41 owned slaves. 41 bought, sold, worked, and many of them raped slaves. Of the 41 who owned slaves, a large percentage of them have what we are now proving from DNA to be descendants. Trauma, sex-based, gender-based trauma is woven into the fabric of the founding, yet and still, women, including Sally Hemings, found joy and loved the children they bore to their rapist. Love those children. And some Black men love those children too, saying things such as, I may not know who the daddy is, but I know who the mama is. And I love her and I love this child. We know it is part, and we won it hard won. It does not minimize. I do not minimize the crimes perpetrated on the bodies of Black women by the founders, but I maximize the triumph of the women who found joy is radical and found their way to knowing love is the strut and hate is the stumble and love the babies they bore. So to me, that was a message I wanted to give to my white sisters, not minimizing anything, but maximizing the possibility every girl has, every woman has. If my daughter was gang raped tonight, tomorrow morning, I would be trying to help her rise from the ashes. I would be prosecuting those people. I would be finding those people. I would fear to be one of those people who did that thing to my daughter. But I would tell my daughter she was as good as when she stood up from their sin as she was when they were acting upon her, that she was not, that she would never let someone's worst day define her best day. And that is wisdom from Black Bottom. That is wisdom from 300 years in this country. So then take Me Too. That was Me Too. And that's solidarity with my white sisters, with all my sisters, my Black sisters who've been raped. We think they'll say her name, and Tanya Blanding. So many people are saying, why? You need to understand when we think about this, Tanya Blanding was killed in the summer of 1967. Breonna Taylor, March 13, 2020, Tanya Jefferson, October 2019. When we remember that Tanya Blanding was killed in her own home by Michigan State troopers in 1967, and that she was playing on a street that I played on. My closest cousin lived on Euclid. Tanya Blanding lived on Euclid, walking distance to my cousin. I've been worrying about her since 1967. People need to understand that Black people have been waiting a long time for Black girls to stop being killed in their homes. It's not a recent event. Tanya Blanding was, her whole family was innocent. They did nothing wrong. There was nothing, they were not drug dealers, and that would not make it all right if they were, but they weren't. They were innocent people. And she was a 4-year-old innocent child. So that I realized that we needed a book in that 4 years ago, that broken time, that the country was seeming more and more divided. I did think we needed to hold on to the truth that love is the way forward. Joy is the way forward. Protecting all the lives. Black Lives Matter. I 100% am committed to the Black Lives Matter movement. But I created the Black Bottom Saints, and I say the roots of Black girl magic run straight to Motown, because when I was born in 1959, we knew the 1960 census, there's something like 122,808 Black girls in Detroit at the time, and less than 800 Black old women. It was a city of Black girls, and they've gone around the world. Some of them become important oncological surgeons. Roots of Black Girl Magic run straight to Detroit. But the wisdom of Motown belongs to everyone. Just like Hamilton in its first cast had everybody almost everyone was Black or of color, so that everyone could read into it the humanity. It was for everyone. And at the same time, it honored hip hop language. It was honoring Black culture. It was really specific and universal at the same time. And that's how I feel. I have universal love for every good person. And I ask everyone to respect my home culture, which is Black culture, like I truly try to respect everyone else's home culture. It's mutual respect and it's awareness. And it doesn't come from forgetting that Ethel Waters wrote her autobiography twice and published it twice. And she narrated her own mother's rape in it. That this Sadie Pryor, a librarian, got the lifeguards for the Black beaches, working behind the scenes. Tanya Blanding, I've already showed you, Eartha Kitt.
Can you tell people about these cards? The
Artist Lane, he's got a sculpture. The Obamas put one of her sculptures in the Capitol. That was her Sojourner Truth. And now Biden has put her Rosa Parks in the Oval Office, and Artist Lane is still living. The cards we're about to announce, as I said, they were done by Jimmy James Green. I'm making a partnership with a woman-owned company in Detroit, and we are going to, and I'm trying to get a Nashville-related company involved in it too. We are going to come forward with these cards because everywhere we've been asking for them, but I want them to bring jobs to the city of Detroit. I want other people to benefit from them. And so I've been trying to figure out how to do that. But I loved having translate my novel into a deck of cards. Part of that was really political work. I wanted this novel to be able to be understood. These stories are too important just for people who can read well. I wanted people to get it with a deck of cards. I wanted them to be in prisons. I wanted little children to play a card game I invented with this. Instead of playing war, I want kids to play peace, and the lower card wins. The 2 beats the 3 when you play peace.
Well, Alice, people in the chat, they want to know where they can get these cards. And so if you are a part of this Zoom, please turn on your camera, please turn on your mic. And if you have a card, I want you to show your card.
And I want to take a picture of you all holding your cards up.
Yes, so please.
So Alita, hang on. I may have to let people open their, if you have a problem, because I may have turned off videos. So I've got to, just give me a second, okay?
Okay, all right.
I see some people are coming.
And I want to, before we end our time, I want to open it up for other questions.
Ask questions. We got 15.
I've seen some in the chat, but I want you to ask. But one of them is like, people are like, where can I get? So to your point, Alice, playing with the cards and having the, like, these are like better than baseball cards. You want to know, where can they get these cards?
You can't get them yet, but we're going to be having eventually spades tournaments, bridge tournaments. We are going to be,
gotta have Tom too. That's the Midwest.
Yes, we're going to have some really fun card parties. I hope with the once when COVID has ended, but we are trying to announce we will be getting. Essentially right now, I only had 100-some decks that were really just prototypes made. And then with COVID, that's one of the things that didn't happen. I was thrilled. I'm one of these full disclosure people. I am a relatively recent breast cancer survivor, about just 2.5 years and a little bit. So when I was planning book tour, I wasn't sure whether I'd really be able to go out on book tour because I didn't know what my circumstances would be. So that was one of the reasons I decided to work with Jimmy James Green to translate my novel into these 52 portraits. And the originals are just stunning. I mean, these are just digitized. All of this is hand cut work of collage work. And so I figured that I would be well enough to be able to sit in a corner and sign books, and we'd have all the art around me, and I had the audio book, someone could read it, and we have this fabulous Spotify playlist. I figured that if I was alive, I could do that much. Fortunately, I'm enjoying great health, and so but man, woman plans and God laughs. So I'm enjoying great health, but I have been in lockdown since March 10th because of the COVID.
Well, but that's awesome that you have beat breast cancer.
Yeah.
I listened to the audio book, which I love that too. I love the narration because it's like three of us, a man and two women, I believe, that do that piece. I love that. I love too that you have this little 13. Okay, first of all, 13 is young for ninth grade, so that tells me a little bit about her anyway. But she did this virtual museum that goes with this that you then can orate over, and that's just another incredible asset to this particular reading. So I tell you, I have fallen completely in love with. So everybody that got the book like I did as a Christmas gift from the same girlfriend, I tell you, you have to read it because it really, really is a great book.
And you can just read the chapters you want. You don't have to just start. I say, the year begins on January 1st, but everyone's not born on January 1st. You can read the famous people you think you know and want to know more about, or you can take a test and decide which saint you might need most. Each of the chapters are 3 to 7 pages. Some are actually as short as 1.5, because these are hard times right now. Mm-hmm. So you may need just a little shot of joy, jolt, or pleasure, or deep. Mm-hmm. And I wanted that to be real for my readers. That would be sort of like if, Spoon River Anthology or Chaucer's Canterbury Tales all have that form, or the actual Saints Day book. I see here, how did you decide which saints would be included in the book? The main thing, you had to pass, there are about 5 tests, but 3 primary tests. One, Ziggy had to love you, indicated by he put you in one of his columns. I had researched and found, before they were digitized in this last year, I was doing microfilm and I found 1,000 and printed up of his columns over 20 years. And so I went through and made a list of which people he talked about the most. So Ziggy had to love you. You had to walk through the lobby of the Gotham Hotel. All the saints don't live in Detroit, but all of them spent significant time in Detroit, as specifically evidenced by they spent time in the Gotham Hotel. And you had to specifically know something important about moving from trauma to transcendence, because Ziggy did basically 3 things. He was the MC at the Swankers Club at town. At one point, that was the Flame Show Bar. Another point, that is the 20 Grand. He wrote for the Michigan Chronicle, one of the top 5 Black newspapers in the United States at the time. And he owned and ran this inner city, you might even call it, quote unquote, I wouldn't say this, but other people at the time said it, ghetto dance school, Center City Dance School, that I say, and Color Girl said, was masquerading as a citizenship academy. He wasn't teaching kids to dance. He was teaching kids to be global citizens. He was putting Baryshnikov in front of us, but he was also putting that story of Night Train Lane, not Baryshnikov, Nureyev. He was putting Nureyev in front of us. He actually showed us an early film camera, Nureyev, in our little dance school. And at the same time, he's telling us about Night Train Lane, the NFL player, that his mama wrapped him up in newspaper and put him in the trash, in the alley. And another old, poor Black woman, Ella Lane, walking down the alley, heard something she thought was a cat that needed to be put out of his misery, and picked up the baby and raised him as her own. He set records his first year when he talked his way onto the LA Rams with his mama-made scrapbook. This is literally true. I've been able to document it. That exists to this day, when there's so many more games and so much more passing. He has an interception record because he always thought about the mama who lifted him out of the trash, not the mama who put him in. That's a lesson for everybody. You have to focus on what works. You got to focus on where the love is, not get all tied up on where the love isn't. Grit, opportunity. And that's what Ziggy taught in our school. And so if you pass those tests, you got it. You had to know something about trauma to transcendence that Ziggy could put in front of his kids.
So if anybody has questions, Lolita, I'm not interrupting you, but
No, she pulled that one out of the chat.
okay, I was going to say, if you just do your raise your hand, you can do it like this, or you can use the hand thing. I'll be glad to unmute you so you can ask a question. Just raise your hand.
Karen Litter had a question too, which is, this is in the
So
chat.
Karen, I'm gonna unmute you.
So I'm gonna read it, Joyce.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Where did Colored Girl come from as a co-narrator editor?
Well, one, I wanted to show the impact of Ziggy. That's so important to show that it's not just Ziggy and who he loved and it was this fabulous world, that it's motivating. It only matters if we have these fabulous lives, which everybody on the Zoom has, if we lift up some other people. So Colored Girl is the example of a person who has an abusive mother, that Ziggy's saints have an impact on her life. She's really supposed to be an every woman, like also like the chat, that's her name, like CG, that every person, instead of being a white male, the original everyman, is CG. But I want everyone, white men, black men, Asian men, gender non-conforming people, to identify with Colored Girl. And that's why she gets past that label to just CG. She's everybody. In the television series, which we're having some discussions about, Whoopi Goldberg instant messaged me on Instagram saying she wanted to help make this a TV series, and other people are coming in and trying to deal with it. We're thinking, instead of using CG, maybe a young male character who is on the edge of going into the drug world, and Ziggy is trying to keep him from doing that, and all the saints. That instead of having an imperiled girl, because I think there's an imperiled women, there's too much of that on television. I rather see all the women who are really thriving, and so we might change that around. But the important thing is to show Ziggy and the saints having impact.
So also another question is, why no index? This is so dense with information, and I really want to refer back to people.
Well, there is, at the beginning of each season, you have a listing of the saints, and you have, like there, I don't know if you can see that, listing and their dates, birth dates and death dates. And the reason we have that is I want you to go on your own adventure too. This is just the beginning. This is Ziggy's perspective and Colored Girl's perspective. One of the things about each of the cards, there's the name. I want you to Google their tips, the facts that are in there. I want you to go to the Library of Congress and look up pictures. The whole thing is, it's not the end of a story, it's the beginning of it. It's as if you met these people in the lobby of the Gotham, and you get to hear a little bit about them, or you hear me gossiping about them, or you Ziggy, and then you go find out how they seem to you. For example, you may know in another Midwestern city who come to Detroit and didn't do that in Detroit. For you, Scatterbrain may never be a saint. You have to vote him off the island, and vote someone else in. But you will come to understand why Ziggy voted him on the island and why Colored Girl included him.
Right. And we can take one question, I think, from, if someone has a question, want to raise their hand. Also, someone asked, they want to know how to get in contact with the person, the young lady that did the museum. So
she is Daria Smith. She is actually at the Tennessee State Museum. She does do a little bit of freelance work, and she's wonderful. She's an African-American woman in her very early 20s with her degree from Kentucky. She's now, I think, getting a master's in this at Johns Hopkins. She's really just fantastic. I saw a brilliant exhibit. I was expecting to meet, frankly, some old person. When I saw the physical layout of the exhibit on the history of Tennessee food, which Deborah's family is represented in that exhibit. She was actually the designer of that exhibit. And I said, I want to meet the designer. And here comes this young woman. And she was just extraordinary. And I was fortunate that she was intrigued by this project. And then I tried to hire all kinds of big deal, normal people at lots of money to build out my museum, because I found this program in Greece and no one really knew how to use it. And it finally occurred to me that somebody who did a lot of video games, that did the spatial video games, that was really, really good at that. And I had a lead actually in my own family, and this young lady, and what's funny, when we'd have meetings, to Greece in Athens, and I'm not going to name, like all kinds of important people would be on this thing that are allegedly, she's the only one who can work the museum, the original platform from the beginning. And I did not describe what I wanted. I said, I want 4 galleries that connect and they go this way, and a central one that you have to end. She understood all of this. And what's sweet about that is she has a brother who's seriously special needs. Very limited vocabulary, maybe 30, 40 words, but very intelligent. And I think it's so wild that she made good use of a challenge in her own life to learn how to communicate with other people. And she was so patient with me and with everyone, running the museum, building the museum, trying it all out, at her and such a great worker. I was sad to see when I've already called, it's when she went back to school, thrilled that she'd be in the 9th grade. And the money she made with me, I think she bought books to try to teach herself Chinese. She certainly bought books to try to teach herself some other language. She's the most wonderful person. I can't wait till her summer vacation starts because my life is not as good without her.
That's so awesome. I mean, we need those kinds of people in our lives. I mean, you never know where the talent's going to come from, and you never know who possesses the skill that you need. And so that's why we need not walk through life with blinders on and with our minds kind of open and our eyes open to having a fresh look at things. So look, I mean, who would have thought a 13-year-old did that? It's amazing.
And I've tried to get opportunities to people who didn't normally get them. And I will close by saying, I think that I really appreciate what you are doing in your lives publicly and privately as progressive political women, as Tennesseans. It has been a very hard time, I think, to be in Davidson County, to be our blue city in a red state. To know so many more things that we know by living down here about the center of the country, that there is much more common cause than people think in other cities. Like when as much as I did not believe in Trump, I'm totally opposed to Trump, but I have friends who voted for Trump. I have my friends in New York who are very prominent. They know not one person personally that they know that voted for Trump, many of them, that they live in silos. In Nashville, I think one of our gifts is we do have connections to large numbers of people. I personally will be one of the first people to say, I think we are not perfect, but for a Southern city, I think we have the best race relations of any Southern city. I think there's so much that is so particularly good about Nashville. And I will clip you, I know you're good, that Lil Hardin Armstrong, and if you've, at Rotary, I've spoken about her a lot. She's in the chapter I wrote in that the African American Museum. She was born in Memphis near Bill Street, raised by an aunt and grandmother who were enslaved. But she came to Fisk and spent 3 years at Fisk. To this day, there is not a plaque in Nashville, Tennessee honoring her. She is probably the greatest, arguably greatest American, not white, not male, not any category, American songwriter, not Black songwriter, not woman songwriter. She's a Black woman songwriter. She had her last #1 after her death on Ringo's Starr. The year I was born, she had #1 with Ray Charles just for the thrill of it. She wrote Strutting with Some Barbecue. That is a jazz song that has been recorded more than almost any other. She lived here for 3 years. When Bessie Smith wrote Nashville Women Blues, those Nashville women, the way they strut, it ain't no bluff. She was talking in the late 20s about Lil Hardin, our Lil Hardin. How do we not claim her? And in terms of country music, who is really, with Mother Mabel and Jimmy Rogers, who do you put up there? Lil Hardin. She played on every bar of Blue Yodel #9 and probably wrote it. She is the godmother of country music. That's an actual fact. How do we not tell that story? For Nashville to be proud. We've got to claim our entire story. Mm-hmm. We've got to claim and it's funny, I'll tease Henry and those guys. I tried to tell them we should have a Black country gallery when we were doing it. They wouldn't do it back then. they wish they had done it now, and then we have a chapter. We got to all, because it seems like country is over here, or Black, this is, but it's a common cause. And it's a common cause. Bluegrass wouldn't be anything without the banjo. The banjo is an African instrument. These things migrate back and forth. I thank you all for spending an hour with me. I really thank you for supporting Parnassus. Ann Padgett could not have been a better ally. I've given her over and over my Tallulah Bankhead Award. I am just really, really thrilled and feel so supported by my Nashville community from every corner of it. And this book, I'm 61, I'll be 62 in May. This is the most important. I've worked on this book for a decade. This is my, by far, most important novel to me. It's a novel I hope will bring jobs to Nashville, because I'm working hard that if this gets chosen as a television series, that it be done partially in Nashville and partially in Detroit. I'm good friends with Callie Corey, who brought Nashville here to Nashville, and she's helped coach me on some pieces of that. But before Callie had Nashville, I had X's and O's, and we filmed that CBS with Brandon here in Nashville. And Callie gives me that props, but we forget our own history. And I really thank Vanderbilt. I was given a sabbatical to work on this book. And that made all the difference for me.
Well, Alice, we are eternally grateful for you not only writing this incredible piece of literature, but also for spending this evening with us.
It's an honor and a privilege.
Broadening our mindset, and really, I feel like a flower that has just like kind of bloomed. You know how it's like a tulip or a rose, and it just kind of unfurls. That's how I feel with reading this book and listening to you. So thank you so much, Alice. Thank
you all. I hope to have a real cocktail with all of you. I want to shout, as I said, so many people who supported me in so many ways, directly and indirectly. And I am just really, really thrilled. And you make me very, very proud to be in. And I know that Leadership Middle Tennessee is on here. One of my very first talks and this I'm happy to do for free and for fun, but I think was with Leadership Middle Tennessee way back with my first novel, I think, or second, at the Lowe's Vanderbilt Plaza. I think one of my first paid talks I ever had was with Leadership Middle Tennessee almost 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
At the Lowe's. I don't even know. Is there anybody here that was in that organization then? It was, I remember at the Lowe's, and it was so fun. I remember it was a big, I don't remember why it was such a groundbreaking one for me, but it really was. And I think it was like a first official keynote. So thank you. It's great to be with all of you. And as I said,
thank you everyone for joining us.
So Lolita, can I say something real quick? I just want to say thank you on behalf of WPC. Thank you, Lolita, for leading this conversation night. Alice, thank you. It was phenomenal. Thank you to Lee Rox for Leadership Middle Tennessee participating. Our next book read is Praying with Our Feet with Lindsay Krinks. You can find it on our website. And Lolita, Alice, it's been a phenomenal evening.
Oh, let me get my picture. You can find
so cheers to everyone.
Cheers.
Yay.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
I can't log off because of